Good evening, everyone. Welcome to my somewhat weekly live. Water's good for the soul, by the way. I'm going to wait while people gather, but I think people should be joining pretty soon. We are also joined today by Tigger. Bella's nowhere to be seen, so I don't know where Bella's going to be. The theme of a lot of the questions that I have gotten tonight is actually quite varied. They range from love and money to networking and side hustling to children and money to retiring. Some interesting personal questions for me. Oh, I'm so glad you like my lives. And I'll probably end a little bit on self empowerment. So I'm going to do it by theme and hopefully it will work out. So the very first question is a very interesting one that I got over DMs. A woman wrote me saying that she earns $140,000 a year. Her boyfriend makes over $1 million. They're talking about possibly getting engaged, and the boyfriend wants a prenup. Oh, thank you for making it to my life. What do I think about this boyfriend asking for a prenup? Well, I asked her, what do you think about the prenup? Because what I think may not matter if she has a different opinion. This woman said she did not like the idea of a prenup. So we talked a little bit about that. It turns out she is actually Christian and so is the boyfriend. So we went into a deeper conversation on what the Bible says about marriage and what the Bible would say about prenup, since there isn't a precedent really for a prenup in the Bible. And I talked about the story of Ruth and Boaz and how Ruth went in with basically nothing in a marriage and Boaz fully committed to her. So my advice to her was, if this was to be a biblical marriage, ask themselves, what would the Bible say? If this is not a biblical marriage, if this is not a Christian marriage, both sides need to agree to a prenup. If one person wants a prenup and the other person doesn't want it, then you're not going to make it work, because plenty of marriages don't work out when it comes to finances. So that needs to be really talked about very honestly. And also, if you are ever in a situation where your significant other asks for a prenup, make sure you get your own lawyer as well. They'll have their lawyer and you're going to have yours. Another person also dating right now says that she's been together with her boyfriend for 9 years. At year age, they moved, at the 8th year of the relationship, they moved in together, and they are having discussions on how to combine the finances. The guy earns what she says low earnings. I don't really know what that means. And the other, he also says that he feels guilty about his debt. I thought this was a really interesting question. From my experience, men more so than women put a lot more of their self-identity in their work, in how much money they bring into a marriage. Or, sorry, they're not married, they're dating. So I can understand why he's hesitant to combine the finances. Maybe he feels like, oh, this is my debt. I don't want to get my girlfriend involved in this. And to this, I would say, just try to schedule a time when you guys are both not emotional and sit yourselves down and really talk about it. What does money mean to you guys? If you're not married now, what would you like to achieve together as a couple when it comes to finances? It may very well be that you guys will come up with a system where he's completely responsible for his debt, but maybe you take on some more of the rent, or maybe he does some more chores. It really depends on the personalities, and this is something for you two to work out. But I think being able to be very open and honest. Thank you for a comment. Being open and honest about finances early in the relationship, or any time before you decide to get married, is a really, really important thing. And now I'm going to go to one of the submitted questions, which is also about, oh no, I lost all my Q&A questions. Hold on, I have a backup, which is my second phone. I often don't like using my second phone because you guys won't be able to see the question that I'm responding to. But another person asked, how would you work with finances in a... Bella, stop scratching! My other cat's being weird. How would you manage finances in a long-distance relationship? So Mr. Save My Sense and I actually were long distance for about, I would say, almost a year of a little bit over a year of our relationship was long distance. I don't think he really wants it to be public information, but at the time I made more money than he did. So again, I paid a little bit more for him to travel over to me, so I had the more intense job, so he had more time to come and see me. And I would say again, financially responsible long distance dating means, what do the two of you value doing together? Is it quality time? Is it acts of service? The book Five Languages is really great at getting to this. Find the activities and values that the two of you have in common, and that's where you put your money, right? How you spend your money is where your values show up, essentially. Okay, now I'm going to move on to questions that talk about work and money, or networking and management. Also, once I finish all the pre-submitted Q&As, you all will also be able to submit questions in the comments below. I'll hold off on all your questions until I finish. One person asked, what is considered a good manager? This is interesting because I've been managing for several years now. And I'm glad. It would be funny if like a picture of me jumped up in your head and I'd go, do you really need this when you were trying to buy something? That would be kind of funny. What makes a great manager? So I went to a couple workshops on this. I read a lot of books about managing, and there's definitely different management styles. I would say what I found that works really well is this essentially a 2x2. It's a framework written by Kim Malone Scott. She was the first boss I ever had when I was an intern at Google. This is a really long time ago, and she doesn't work at Google anymore. But she calls it basically radical candor, in that you are very honest and transparent about giving feedback, but you're not a jerk doing so. And I liked her framework a lot because she says, if you are too nice of a boss and you don't give transparent feedback, people don't know how to improve. If you are giving transparent feedback, but you're really mean about it, then you are perceived as a tyrant. And then the opposite, if you give a lot of good feedback and if you give a lot of nice feedback and you're also really mean about it, that doesn't make any sense. But essentially she says on the 2x2, the quadrant where you want to be is you want to give good feedback, you want to give transparent feedback, and you want to be, kind in doing so. So that's where I think the manager's role is to empower the people that you manage to be the best versions of themselves, recognizing their weaknesses and strengths. So on any given team that I work with, there are some people who are better at one thing than another. If I have a really bad work deadline, I put every person against their strength. But as time allows, I ask each of them, is there something that you're curious about? Is there something that you want to learn more? And I will let them observe the other person who's doing the analysis to learn alongside with it. And that's usually how I manage. Then again, I also manage really, really bright, really motivated people. So again, it's a case-by-case kind of basis. Another person asked how to get over feeling insecurity about appearing assertive. And it was surprising to me because when I first started working, I was very shy. I did not self-advocate because I didn't want to come across as rude. I thought that the people who spoke up a lot were kind of like in your face a little bit. But then I realized, at least in the American work culture, if you don't self-advocate, if you don't make sure that at the very least the people who have a say in your promotion know the quality of your work, then you could very easily be passed up. You could very easily be taken advantage of or passed over for someone else. Okay, well, make sure you don't burn yourself when you're cooking dinner. And so when you think about being assertive, I always think come from a position of knowledge. I don't answer every question that you guys submit to me. There are questions that I skip most of the time because y'all are getting a little bit too personal up in my life. But some of the questions I skip is because I don't know the best answer to it. So I appear very confident because I cherry pick only the stuff that I'm good at explaining. And that's probably one of the reasons why, is if you know that you've done the work and you did, hard work, then you should be proud of it and you should be able to assert it. It doesn't mean that I have to come across and pound the table and sound like this all the time. I actually don't sound like that at all when I speak in a meeting. In fact, most of the time when I'm presenting a meeting, I probably use a similar voice as the one you're hearing right now. I'll say, okay, on the next page, you'll see that the market trend looks like this. As you can see, this is based in the research that we did here and there. Please take a note, this particular trend is likely to be the big one, or something like that. Great. Okay. There's another person who said that work would cause anxiety if they're thinking about taking on another side hustle to make more money. So here's the thing. Work is work is work is work. Work is never going to really be a source of happiness. I think it's a huge fallacy of people like Steve Jobs to say, make work your passion. Most of us don't have that kind of luxury. I really think people who have truly happiness and calling into work, that's great. If you get paid a lot for doing that, that's even better. But that's not that. I don't like really rich people selling college grads that kind of dream. Instead, I would say this. If you have a lot of anxiety from thinking about how to, work more, it may actually be your body telling you to slow down. Every one of us has limits, whether it is physical or mental. Many of my limits are actually physical. I'm not in really good shape. Hi, Jenny. Hi from Arizona. That's awesome. Many of us are not I'm not in good shape. And I'll work on it, but I'm not going to be a world-class athlete. And some of us, our mental capacity just is limited. In fact, if you recognize that you might not be in the strongest of positions mentally, I actually say slow down. Don't take on more, because you only, the most powerful organ that we have, there's two organs that we have that are powerful. There's your heart, because the heart keeps your body alive. Your mind is what controls your destiny. So much of what I talk about on my feed, in my stories, is your mindset, how you think about your life. If you take on too much, you are putting yourself into a situation where you overcommit. Brooklyn, you guys are right across the river from me. I'm on the Upper West Side. Woo! And if you take on too much, you're not going to do well in anything. And when you don't do well in anything because you took on too much, you're going to perceive yourself as a constant failure. Even if you actually are not a failure, you just took on too much, right? So some of you guys are working too many hours and you're not letting your mind recuperate. Some people say, Shang, how the hell do you work so many hours? It's because I can, because my mental capacity is probably bigger than most people. Not here to boast about a big brain. That's kind of weird, boasting about, another organ. But that's just, I acknowledge it, but I also acknowledge I have other limits. So don't take on too much. If you actually set much more realistic goals and you can do, about 90% of it very well, you will actually feel a lot happier. I promise you that. Another person asked, should I wait to start a business if I'm not debt-free? I pinged this person specifically and I asked, can you go into a little bit more detail? What kind of business is this? Because some businesses don't cost a lot of money to start. Turns out this person wanted to start a coaching business. So coaching businesses don't have a lot of capital. It's not like you're investing millions of dollars to build a factory, right? I mean, she probably has some startup legal fees and probably some software fees, online web hosting fees, but we're not talking millions of dollars. We're talking at most several thousand to start a business. In that aspect, I would say to this, if you're not debt free, but you can get a business that would be profitable in a very short amount of time, that's actually a good side hustle. And a good side hustle is one that which you can be profitable at and one in which you have talent or an unfair advantage. It's going to be different for a lot of people. I have, there's somebody that I coach who is starting a sort of like a catering business because she's really good at cooking. So yeah, she should absolutely make more money from it by side hustling. So for that, I would say if it's low cost to start a business, that's how I started photography. Photography was a little bit more cost. I think my startup costs were maybe $10,000 of equipment, so it's a little bit more, but I immediately made it back in like a year or so. Then I had a series of questions from people about children versus career versus money and debt payoff. Now, that being said, I'm not a mom. I can't, I'm not going to tell you guys how to raise your children. So instead, a lot of questions were this. There's a mom who currently works about 10 to 15 hours a week, and that allows her to, see her kids a lot. She could work more hours for $20,000 more, should she do so. Another question was, there's a mom who really doesn't like public schools and the values. She wants her children to grow up in a Christian environment, so she's sending her children to Christian private school, but it's costing her a lot of money. And she asked me if there's another alternative. In both situations, I said this: as parents, what is the most important thing that you retained from your childhood, from your parents? It's love. Love is what allows us as normal selfish human beings to care for another tiny little selfish human being who, frankly, most of the time pisses the hell out of you. So if love really is the main ingredient in parenting, that should come first. And how do you provide that love? Love doesn't have to come from material items. It can come from you. It can come from you just being there. You picking your kid up after school, or you teaching your child, or you maintaining such that you would not get into debt while sending your children to school because you don't have as much of a leeway as your children do. So for that matter, I said to both mothers, I said, you know what's best for your children. Pick love. And if that means not necessarily working more hours just to get a little bit more pay, that might be it. For the mother who was sending her children to private school, we did decide that it was a little bit too expensive for her to do so. I actually recommended group homeschooling to her because actually several of her friends were already homeschooling. So that's a perfect situation for her to join in a homeschooling, and homeschooling costs a lot less than private schooling. The next set of questions I'm going to now enter are the more, one more career question. How can I better network to find clients if I'm now starting on my own? The person who asked this is doing it in grant writing, which I'm not sure what that means. I don't know every career that's out there, but thinking in terms of clients in general, I do know a lot about selling, okay? So I started Save My Sense about 2 years ago. I started my photography business about 10 plus years ago, long time. Usually in your first couple months to a year, that's the hardest part about starting a business, is finding clients. You got to ask yourself, where do my type of clients go when they have a problem that I can solve? As a wedding photographer, I quickly pulled a bunch of people who were engaged and getting married, and almost all of them said, oh, we don't read wedding magazines anymore. We go online and search. So I learned very quickly I have to make sure that my wedding photography website had really good search engine optimization. Back then, SEO was a lot more important than social optimization. Nowadays, social search is now the bigger thing. Video search is now bigger. But back then, it was all about text-based search. So even though my wedding photography website had a lot of images, I made sure to write copy that would show up in search results so that people, when they type Boston wedding photographer, because I was based in Boston at the time, they would find me. And I have another secret sauce that I won't share. I've already said this many times before. There's a secret sauce to how I became very successful as a photographer. But essentially, I put myself out there where people would find me. And I showed them that I had a product that would solve their problem. People wanted a wedding photographer that wasn't just about posy photos. They want a photographer who could handle the really difficult lighting conditions in Boston where the weather is just terrible, and they want a photographer who was authentic, and that's what I offered. Now, Save My Sense, first year, I didn't really coach that many people. I never really went into Save My Sense to make money, but I did want to make my knowledge further based. I started out with a blog. I ended up not having a lot of time to write a blog. So several of you guys asked, would I ever write a book? Hey, if I can't keep a blog up, how do you expect me to even write a book, right? I just don't have time for that right now. But as it turns out, I discovered hashtag debt-free community. Thank you, debt-free in sunny California. You really are the one who started all of this. Yeah, so I started just hashtagging and engaging in that community, and somehow over the span of 8 months I exploded to 10,000 followers. My God, I couldn't even really tell you how I got there. I think there's a lot of luck, but I think a lot of it is being very consistent in providing a product. I guess my product is my knowledge, in providing something that you guys are seeking. And so that's what I can offer you. Great. So let's talk about retiring. So the one of the most common questions that I get when it comes to the topic of retirement is 401k, Roth 401k, Roth IRA, which one do I start with? If you're very early on this journey and you don't know the tax implications of a lot of these, because all these things are essentially tax shelters. If 401ks and IRAs never existed, the only way that you could invest would be in the brokerage account, which means you take money that you've already paid taxes on. So if your income came out here and then your taxes fell, so now you take this money, you put it into the brokerage account. Let's say your brokerage account moves from here up to here, the government still taxes you on the difference between here. So you don't get this full amount, your taxes eat away, so this is your profits. The 401ks, the IRAs of the world save you on one of those two taxes. Either they save taxes from when you earned money to when you get your paycheck, or they save your taxes from when you put into the investment and when you pull out of the investment and cash it out. So at the end of the day, it's a tax question, but that's a question that's many years down the road for you guys, because these are retirement accounts. They're not meant to be liquidated until you retire. So if you're just starting, and especially when you have less than $6,000 a year to invest, it actually doesn't really matter. Just pick one. Just get started now. Go increase your retirement contributions right now on your paycheck if you have access to one of these accounts, and start today. Just get started. Then ask me that question later when you know how the taxes work. Once you know how the taxes work, the natural question that you're going to ask me is, Sean, how do I know which tax bracket I am in? That's when I will know that you have a better understanding of these accounts. Right now, when you're asking 401k IRA, it means you don't even know how these things work. Go Google right now. Google 401k, Google Roth IRA, Google IRA. Learn the differences. You need to know this code. It's not that hard. Retirement is not hard to understand. You got to invest the time into it. Which brings me to another question. Several people have asked, how do you figure out how to learn? I literally Googled everything. I started out committing to 1 hour a day, learning about personal finance ever since the age of 21 when I started my first full-time job. And I just Googled. I happened to come across a couple of really amazing blogs. I loved Get Rich Slowly. I loved Mr. Money Mustache, two of my favorite blogs. I already started using Investopedia for my work, but those are a great place to start. You don't have to read everything I read. You just got to read something. You just got to read and invest time. How do you think all the knowledge in the world is shared? It's written down. And that's how you went to school. You read in school. Same thing. You're out of school now, but you're not done learning. You will never, ever stop learning in life. If you adopt that attitude, you will always be learning, and then you will always get a little bit better at the end of the day. That brings me to the other really dangerous question that I've gotten, which is, should I cash out my retirement to get out of debt? Almost always, my answer is no. There may have been one exception to this. And the reason is this: retirement accounts are designed by nature for you not to cash them out. You lose 10% off the top if you cash out before age 59 and a half. Not to mention, depending on the structure of the account, you might then get taxed on it. If you put in this amount of money and it grew a little bit and you cash it out, you lose this much amount of money. Whereas if you left it in there and it grows over time, it will eventually grow like this, as long as you invest in stuff that grows. Some of you guys forgot to invest your money in your 401ks. That's a bad thing. Retirement accounts are for the long run. Your debt is a short run problem. People are like, whoa, Shang, it takes us like 6 to 10 years to pay off debt. No. Your debt is a short-term problem because I'm telling you it is. And now that you believe that debt is a short-term problem, I'm telling you it's not forever. If you decide today to radically change your life, spend significantly less than you earn, house hack the hell out of your life, take, share apartments, whatever, side hustle, take on a second job, do whatever the hell you need to do to save the money and pay it off. There are people I coach right now who I said, okay, I coach a lot of people who earn less than $50,000 a year. When you're below median household income in the United States, it is difficult. For many of them, I actually encourage them right now to focus on increasing their income while paring back their spending, because for a lot of people, you have to do both. Only when people reach about the 100K level, I would say you don't need to add more income to it. You just need to learn how to pare back. But for many of you guys, it's side hustling because you got into this debt somehow. Somewhere along the way, you signed something to get into debt. Maybe you didn't understand it. It doesn't matter. Nobody held a gun to your head unless you did. And I'm really sorry that happened. But you got into this debt. Debt doesn't take overnight to get out, but it doesn't take forever. And if you cash out your retirement, you're stealing from your future. And that's a very sad thing because why would you steal from yourself? Especially the older version of yourself where you're going to be a little bit more frailer and you're not going to have as good of a body as you are now. So please do not cash out your retirement. There are other ways to get out of debt. On the other side, someone asked, saving for a rainy day, should I put in a high rate savings account or in index funds? Index funds means investing in the market. The markets are risky. When do you usually need an emergency fund? When the economy is bad. When everything's tanking, all your bosses are like, whoa, I gotta fire some people, or I gotta let go of some people so that I can conserve cash. So the time when you need the emergency fund the most is when the market is crashing. That's why you should not put your emergency fund into an index fund. Put it in a high rate online savings account. And there's many of them. I'm sorry. Getting old in Asian culture is actually a huge blessing. It's more the Western culture that people think getting old is a bad thing. I don't fear getting old. So put your emergency savings in a high rate savings account. Someone asked about the FIRE. How does FIRE work? And she understood FIRE as taking the cost of living multiplied by 25. That's actually somewhat correct. FIRE, a lot of people use the 4% withdrawal rate, which is what you'll see on a lot of FIRE accounts, which says if you take your entire asset base and you calculate 4% of it, can you live off of that 4%? I make it a little bit more nuanced than that. I would say you can hit FIRE if you can also manage to geography hack and move to a lower cost area, and then you can withdraw at a 4% withdrawal rate. 4% equates to 25 times the cost of living. It doesn't mean, though, that your assets run out after 25 years, because FIRE assumes that you are a savvy investor and that you've invested everything into something that grows. And most FIRE bloggers assume that you are actually investing in either the broader stock market or in high growth investment property, not low growth like residential, but like investment properties that are growing much faster than average. So even though you're withdrawing at a 4% rate, if your underlying assets are growing at 10%, you're still making a 6% differential each year, so your money actually does not run out. That's how FIRE technically works. There are risks to FIRE. One of the biggest reasons why I am not FIRE today is I don't trust where healthcare in this country is going. Some of you guys who saw my stories from last night and my never-ending battle with the prior authorization department, the billing department at my hospital, my insurance company, and all of that. If I already have such a shitty time today dealing with hospital bills, I cannot even imagine what it would be like 20, 30 years from me right now. Healthcare is growing at a rate of about 10% per year in this country, meaning that our investments can barely keep up with it. And this is 10% growth before taxes. So that's why I'm a little bit more conservative about it. And I want a slightly bigger cushion before I think about early retirement. And so that is a different question. Is a lot of you guys every week ask me, should I pay off this debt versus not that debt? Should I invest now or whatever? I even had a really great question that asked, my company offers me a 10% discount on all employee stock purchases. I think this person had $200,000 in student loan debt. Should they still participate in the stock purchase program? It all comes down to growth rates. And if you don't know your growth rates, you got to figure it out. All of your loans have interest rates, right? Which ones grow the fastest? The ones with the higher interest rates. So mathematically, which one do you pay down? The ones with the higher interest rates. It's pure math. If you don't know how to exponentialize a number, go back to high school math textbook and learn how to work with exponentials. That is, you absolutely must know how exponents work. It's a failure of the American, again, I speak to American audience, it's a failure of the American system for not teaching people about the power of compounding. Math teachers, step up your game. I'm sorry, you gotta teach compounding. Okay, so if your student loans compound at 6% a year, and let's say you do know how to invest, and you are able to recognize, post-tax growth of 8 to 10% in investing in the stock market, then maybe you should invest. However, many people are coming to me not knowing how to invest, not knowing how to hit, the historical stock market growth, not understanding anything about index funds. For the most part, if you don't know shit about investing, pay off your debt first, because you're going to be a newbie at investing, which means that you're not going to be even hitting the average. So that's my first piece of advice. Second, but once you get better at investing, and investing is not hard. If you don't understand it, use a robo-advisor, use Betterment. I love Betterment. Somebody asked me about Fidelity Go. Yeah, it's the same thing. Use a robo-advisor and have an algorithm invest for you until you can get the hang of it. Don't do this alone. Whenever you don't know how to do something, you read about it, you learn about it, or you find someone else to teach you about it, and you're gonna pay them to teach you about it. So you guys can pay me too, but I don't teach investing as much because I don't have, I'm not a CFP. I don't have the certification to teach about investments. That's why I don't do it, because I don't want anyone suing my ass. But let's go back to, again, you have a trade-off. You find the thing that is growing the fastest in your portfolio, whether it is an asset or debt, and focus your stuff there. However, there are, again, some years when investments don't grow, and those are the years when you have to pay off debt. So in general, I'm pretty allergic to debt other than mortgage. In general, I think you should be paying off most of your debt before you get to investing. But that doesn't mean that you should stop learning right now. While you're paying off debt, you might as well be learning about investing anyway. Okay. If your employee, if you feel like you've maxed out on different tax shelters, if you've already done, the 401k, and you've done the Roth IRA, or your company doesn't offer you the 401k, whatever, use a normal brokerage account. There's no limit to how much money you can put into a brokerage account. Sorry, water break for a second. A brokerage account is just an account with Vanguard, Fidelity, Betterment, any financial institution that offers you access to buying investments. And yes, I save all lives to YouTube in an undisclosed link. The only way for you to find it is when I publish it to my Facebook group. So you guys gotta be members of my Facebook group to get it. And no, I will not join other social networks and post this anywhere else. So if you're not a member of Facebook, sorry, you're out of luck. I just don't have time to deal with, every social media network under the sun. Okay. So yeah, same thing. Somebody else asked about, I maxed out 529s. How do I save money for my children? Brokerage account. No one's stopping you. It's just that brokerage account has fewer tax advantages than others. Okay. Pardon me while I scroll through all the questions that I've gotten. Best self-service with unlimited data for monthly dollars. You can Google that one. I'm not going to tell you with the best cell service. That's a Googleable question. Do you need to pay for a Facebook? No. I have a free Facebook group. I limit. You have to request to join it because I just don't want like all the spammers under the sun to join the Facebook group. But you don't have to pay to be in it. I charge for a la carte coaching, for monthly coaching, which I don't even want to publicize because it's so oversubscribed. I've started a wait list in my email inbox, and the wait list is like multiple people deep. And I don't even have open spots available until June, the earliest right now. So I'm sorry. I'm a little bit oversubscribed, but you guys can always follow me on Instagram and learn as much as you can and, learn from these Ask Me Anythings. Interesting question. Someone asked, how do I retain everything that I learn, everything that I read daily? I don't. So I think the best way to learn is ask yourself, after you've read everything, what does this mean? There's no point in learning if you don't internalize something. So read with a question in mind. Be curious. Have a hypothesis or have something to prove or disprove. That's the way I read. I read about things that I'm curious about. I also ask myself, where's the innovation coming from? Where are the patterns? What is everybody doing lately? What are some very knowledgeable people doing with their finances or career? Okay, then the last question that I'm going to answer before I open up to the floor. You guys can feel free to start writing your follow-up questions now. Otherwise, I will end the live soon. If there's anything that I could change from my past, what would it be? Which is interesting, because there's nothing I would change. I cherish every triumph and every struggle I have had. I wouldn't even change the fact that my hubby and I have infertility and that I have to go through IVF. What, do I like it? No, hell no. Do you think I like shooting up my butt every day with a 1.5-inch needle? No. But I believe that all of us are put here on earth for a reason, and that all of our lives have different paths. And if I were to change something, it's going to have a butterfly effect, and something else later on in life might not go the way that I like it to go. So I take each day as a gift, and I do my best to live up to the gift that I've received from God. How do I personally plan my things? Paper, Google Calendar, something else? I have a Google Calendar that I coordinate for my personal life and with my husband. So if there's something for both of us, we share the same entry. If it's just one of us, we have a code so you can tell who is on each entry. Then I have a work calendar. The work calendar rules my 8 o'clock to 9 p.m., I guess. So if I have personal things that overlap at that time, I have personal things that go into the 8 a.m. to 9 p.m., then they overlap. It's not a perfect system, but it works. But what I do is this. As a planner, I force people to decisions. When people say, hey, Sean, want to hang out? I immediately come back and say, yes, these are the 3 following times that work for me. What would you like? What would you like? They pick one. I'm like, all right, great. How about? And I already suggest the activity. How about you come over for a meal? Or how about we do Starbucks here? How about we grab dinner here? And I already have pre-selected locations and activities. By doing so, one, I get to control my budget. So if I have a lot of budget and I like this person, we get dinner. If I'm running out of budget, then this person not as interesting. Or I don't know you very well, I would do a coffee. Anyway, so I'm very proactive about scheduling things on my calendar. All right. Any other questions? Ooh, someone else is having a live too, so maybe you guys should probably listen to someone else's live. I'm seeing like 2 lives right now on the debt-free community. Oh, yeah, one final question on 529s. How did I pick between an in-state versus out-of-state? So 529s don't work for every state. Only a dozen or so states actually really do offer a income tax break. So you should figure out the one that works for you, depending on the state you live in, which isn't always the same. For New Yorkers, there is a tax break for 529s, and that's why hubby and I both have one. How did I find my mentors? Did you mentor women starting in industry? Always. I started mentoring in like college because I believe there's also things I can learn from people who are younger than me. And finding mentors, they change. I reached out to upperclassmen when I was in college. First coming out of work, I tried to know people within the next 5 years. As I got older, I had to become bolder. Sometimes it means me going to conferences. Sometimes it means me reaching out to some friends who've had good mentors and asking them if they had anyone to recommend I meet. And then a lot of it is also just naturally through the work that I do. And obviously at work now, I've found after, 1 or 2 years of working, a couple of partners at my firm who are very similar to me, who I've asked to be my mentors. And I did say earlier that I wanted to find a male mentor because my company is majority male, and the male mentor would have greater power in pulling me up. I think it's important. I don't think women should only network with other women. What boundaries have you put in place to ensure work-life balance? There is no fucking work-life balance. I'm sorry. You will never, ever, ever have work-life balance. If you can throw out the idea of work-life balance and recognize that there are going to be many, many things in your life that require your attention. At any point in time, some of them are going to drop. You have to pick a priority. So I've prioritized work for many, many years of my life. Now I'm prioritizing getting pregnant. So that would be my new priority. And if I'm pregnant, then eventually my kids will be my priority. And if kids are in school, then maybe writing the eventual book that I'm going to write will be the priority. Who knows, right? But I never believe in work-life balance. I think it's a pipe dream, irresponsibly sold by people who write books, self-help books. So there's no personal life, there's no work-life balance, only priorities. Do I use LinkedIn? Yes. LinkedIn is primarily better for office-based jobs. It's not so much good for like union-based jobs or service jobs or retail jobs, but it's really, really good for what I do. But there's a lot of people who ask to join my network who I'm like, who the heck are you? Don't ever add someone to your network that you don't know. Like, that is a huge faux pas. Ask to be introduced. So what you do is go on LinkedIn, find people who are interesting, look for a common connection, and ask your common connection to introduce you to the person. Reach out to the person, have a conversation, and then you can invite them. So for me, I'm very selective about who I let into my LinkedIn network because I only want to have people that I actually know, because a lot of the jobs that I hear about is on LinkedIn, just via connections. Does the 4% for FIRE include Social Security? I think most FIRE people don't count on Social Security. Right now, if you're like nearing 65, 70 years old, sure. But for many of us who in the FIRE movement, we're in our 30s, I'm not counting on Social Security. Sorry, I think it's one of those government programs that it's not going to have a lot of money left. Okay, great. Just pausing to see if any other comments come through because there's usually like a 10-second lag between when you guys type the comment and when I see it. What time is it, by the way? It is actually time for my IVF injection, so I need to go. Thank you all for joining today. Remember, you have the power to teach yourself. You're not a dumb person. People make stupid mistakes, but you're not dumb. You can learn this. This is not rocket science. Investing is not about actually trying to hit the moon. It's shooting for the stars, right? You got this. All of you, you got this. Okay? Talk to you next time. Bye.